This is Harry Gines, the first black man of reparations in U.S. history, coming to you today with another presentation of The Invisible Man. The Invisible Man, as we know, depicts a black man in the United States as invisible during the 1930s and 40s by author Ralph Ellison. Now today we bring a version of the 21st century and those of the 20th century, may even touch back into the 19th century. But yet these people will be used within a time travel. We will use certain people within the time travel of the Invisible Man. Today our feature is Fred Hampton. Fred Hampton was a Black Panther who was assassinated or gunned down by the Chicago police in the 1960s. Now, when we do this time travel, as I just mentioned, there will be names in history that will support the fact that Fred Hampton will be declared invisible today. So he will be part of the team in the 21st century of invisible men. Yes, that is what we're here today to do. Now, it will take the time travel, but yet stay focused with this presentation as it takes you onto a journey. Now, the journey starts with the NBA. Now, how is all this going to link to Fred Hampton? The title of this presentation is Fred Hampton versus Jesse James. So it will take you on quite a journey. So now that we're starting in the 21st century about the NBA and how would that link to Fred Hampton? Well, here recently, the Los Angeles Lakers won a championship. It was a very unique championship in the sense that it was played in some conditions as they called the bubble in Disneyland. But as we get more into what was taking place outside the bubble, that is where protests were occurring, police violence that has reached proportions haven't seen since the 1960s. Now, that's even just a small portion of the time travel, linking it now to the 21st century and how directly the NBA has touched on some subjects that Fred Hampton had intended to accomplish. So what I'm saying is, if I can get straight to the meat of it, if you notice the speeches that were gave to the public, they were gave to the public by NBA players. Now that hasn't really happened, since Bill Russell. When they gave those speeches and their testimony, however way it may be said, from a social media platform, meaning that someone could have been just simply, today technology has made it possible that everyone has a voice. And that is what Harry Gines comes today to do, to bring forth what was said by those players, former players, coaches, etc., etc. I mean, they had a marvelous speech presentation to give. But Fred Hampton also gave plenty of speeches on the same subjects of racial equality. Now, if I can say it like that, the world now waits. The championship is over. So all the champagne been popped. But in particular, if I can get straight to the meat, Isiah Thomas mentioned about programs or even education reform. If I can say it like that, he mentioned this, that himself as well as other former players, to mention Kareem Abdul-Jabbar, who befriend Bill Russell for decades. Though that twosome right there was very impressive to hear those names being dropped by Isiah Thomas about the forthcoming programs that I've yet to hear anything else about. So today, knowing that the Black Panther Party, under the leadership of Fred Hampton, had such programs of education, nutrition, diet for the youth going to school. There were a lot of programs that the Black Panther Party had. So when Isiah Thomas mentions about the forthcoming programs, the world would like to hear what's forthcoming. What would be different than what Fred Hampton, under good attributes, brought to the table? That is how that links. But now, not trying to put anybody on the spot, but that happens when rich men, be it black or white, give speeches, and then what happens? The poor are still left waiting and waiting for that hope of such programs, etc., etc. That is what happens. So today, all I'm asking for, if you made those heartfelt speeches, always remember, people are waiting. So if you ask a poor man, that is what social media does. It gives the voice of the poor an opportunity to be heard. The program was very interesting, but yet we still waiting. We out here doing whatever we can to survive. You recognize it? Yes. We do what we have to survive. So waiting on that program, I'm not trying to ask for your pity or even to find something sympathetic. This is life right here. In giving life, in giving plasma, maybe it may save some lives, but also it gives me a livelihood of the donations and the contributions that I get from it. So keep in mind, I am very interested in the programs that I haven't heard anything else from since you gave your heartfelt speech. So Isiah Thomas, I challenge you to bring forth some information that you set forth. Now, even if you could do something as simple as calling King James, give King James a call, because King James also has fulfilled some goals that Fred Hampton was already in the midst of. You see, King James has a school. He has funded a school built from the ground up, as I understood it, from his hometown in Akron. But no one ever hears any follow-up on it. I mean, it's a virus out here right now, and schools right now are having a very hard time. So it would be very interesting to see and hear, even if you can do an interview with King James as far as the schooling that he has done with his own monies. You see, so I'm here to commend him, for all his educational endeavors, that he has made a difference in the communities. But when you don't do a follow-up, that's not good. Okay, keep whatever you've done positive. And Isiah, I'm not trying to do you like that. I'm just saying that you have something going. And we was very patient. We let the, series do what it do, and we wish both teams the best. But that's over now. Now, if we look at the situation as we go through the time travel, and like I told you, this presentation entitles Fred Hampton versus Jesse James. Now, Jesse James was a Confederate, you see, but yet even in the 21st century, if you look at all the information and footage that you have from Jesse James, and if any of the shadow of reputation is cast over to Fred Hampton because he was gunned down like a dog. So we must have some kind of correlation between Jesse James with Fred Hampton, given how you want to portray Fred Hampton as being something that maybe some people might say, maybe if you could have given in sometimes, just sometimes, give in. Let the poor be heard. You see, that is what he tried to bring under good attributes. And you keep in mind at the time, what most people just can't seem to comprehend, that the diversity that they have today in the 21st century really wasn't that long ago. It was a segregated society in America, a segregated. So you reap the rewards through Fred Hampton sacrifices of his life. Yes, you do. Now, in a segregated society, we don't want to make that necessarily look like it's foul, because that's the picture that it seems to paint, that segregation is foul and desegregation is cleanliness or holy. It really, if you look at segregation, if you really look at it, U.S. blacks had a care for each other that it seems like it's lost. So any kind of good attributes of any icon of the past, and here in the 21st century, you seem as if you want to reemerge some of those ideas. Those ideas aren't new. Those ideas would come from Fred Hampton and the Black Panther Party. That's, well, what I'm trying to say is, history does not give Fred Hampton, he's known on Google as being invisible without me even declaring it. Google makes it known that the United States would rather Fred Hampton disappear. You know, the case of it, I mean, it's a very foul case that occurred during a time that actually, if you really look at it, the diversity was being cried out for. Some type of justice where a black man just couldn't get lynched for a Friday night party, bonfire. Come on. Look, the 21st century isn't that far since the 20th century. It's not that much distance in year and era. It's not that much distance. People want to make it seem like it was so long ago, but something did occur where people believed that desegregation would be better than segregation. People wanted to try that. But if you look at the neighborhoods today, it is impossible for anyone who grew up in the 20th century, to say that desegregation is a total success. Sure, many have reaped the rewards, but Fred Hampton was deprived of such luxuries. And if you look at Brown versus Topeka, Kansas, where the schools were supposed to have been desegregated since 1958. Now the time span between, during the time travel, the time span between 58 and 69, when Fred Hampton was killed, well, that's not really that, long of a distance, but yet nothing was really accomplished, not nationwide. No, it wasn't to the 80s. Some cities had to even go back in court to demand, such diversities. This is in the 80s. There were some cities that were still segregated as far as the school systems, the public school systems. So keep in mind, when you're speaking of the 20th century and the time span that it took to bring about diversity, and the results from that diversity, meaning how the neighborhoods look now, maybe segregation should have been the way. I mean, you would have to ask a poor man, Ask a poor man, and he will tell you what his needs are rather than trying to assume certain things. That's what happened to a slave. Anything would sound good to a slave, So when you have only the rich being the voice for the poor, there are issues that I say don't get addressed. You're always left waiting. That's what's happening. We're waiting. We're waiting for Isiah Thomas to come forth with programs that I will tell you that are more likely been tried, but it was wiped out. Couldn't have that. When you speak of Fred Hampton, you would have to look at somebody not just so much as a revolutionary, but somebody who wanted the liberation. Yes, you look up the definition of liberation of U.S. blacks. There are countries like Haiti, that won their liberation through, violence. They took theirs. So what we're saying is that, it doesn't have to get that dramatic. It really doesn't. When you have law that says under Lincoln and Isiah Thomas mentioned Lincoln. That's what he did. Isiah Thomas came on national TV speaking about Lincoln. Now make that perfectly clear. Now when you speak about Lincoln, make sure you understand Abraham Lincoln was a segregationist, and the land of America was segregation for a very long time, and it survived. You see, so when you look at the 21st century, and yet the prosperity of rich blacks have succeeded any imaginary number that you could come up with. How many black millionaires there are? We ain't talking about billionaires, just millionaires. You see, you don't have to be famous to be a millionaire, and be black in America. I say that to say you can fix most of your problems. You really can. And just in here alone, okay, take a sports athlete. If you took a sports athlete, even like Bill Russell made nowhere near the kind of money that players make today. Now he's humble and he's grateful. He got a pension. Every time somebody give one of them great big contracts, it only raises his pension. So he's good. But just in raw number, no, it was nowhere near those kind of numbers. That was not really even envisioned. The first time I can recollect $1 million contract was Muhammad Ali. He said he wouldn't fight no more unless you got $1 million plus. So an athlete making $1 million for an event, per event, that's the first time I ever heard of such numbers like that. They were making, tens of thousands, hundreds of thousands even, but there's a difference between tens of thousands versus hundreds of thousands. That's minor league talk today, But anyhow, I'm simply saying, you must really understand the voice of the poor is totally different than the voice of a rich black man. A rich black man will never have a use or even find it necessary for reparations. He may feel that way, and he may enjoy his liberties that he has today of being rich and able to go through America as he chooses to an extent. But yet, for the most part, yes, the economic system dates back to Lincoln. That's what it dates back to. And at that point of Lincoln, where the problem started, and it never got fixed. So just on touching on that era of Lincoln, who would spring forth? Jesse James. You see it? Yes. So it is all linked with Fred Hampton, because you don't look at Jesse James the same way you look at Fred Hampton. No, you don't. No, you don't. America does not look at them in the same light at all. You know, because Jesse Jackson, not Jesse Jackson, excuse me, Jesse James. Jesse James, you know, well, Jesse Jackson too, you know, Jesse Jackson, you know, it's okay. He's still around, you know. He'll even tell you, you know, because he has a quote that he mentions actually that he has said when he grew up, you know, and became, you know, a man walking through society in the 1950s and 60s, and when a group of white men got behind him, an adrenaline rushed through his body to the point where he felt a need to either defend himself or flee. It was one of the two, but that was what was going through him as groups of white men would come behind him. Now, white people might say the same thing in reverse, but right now this is about Fred Hampton and Jesse Jackson. Jesse Jackson said that, you know, and today in the 21st century, better yet, the 20th century, the statement was made in the 20th century. Yeah, Jesse Jackson said that when a group of black men get behind him, that same fear and rush comes through him as if he doesn't know whether he should defend himself or flee. Now that's the 21st century. You can see that. It was the same feeling in the 20th century because that's what's going on. You know, why is all this fear? It's too much fear to begin with, you know, and it's too much injustice from the start. So it's a very difficult travel for a poor man versus a rich man. Very different travel completely in the United States. See, you look at all those game shows, well, all them game shows got them old, you know, nice trips and everything, you know, and everything looks nice and sparkling. But behind all those bricks and buildings, you'll find the hood. Yes, you'll find the hood down there. And it would be a totally different world than what a contestant might win on a game show where he might be staying. Always remember that. You know, that's for people internationally speaking. Watching them game shows, yeah, that's not really, you know, where the heart of the hood is. Okay, keep that in mind. Now, Fred Hampton, we still with Fred Hampton. Fred Hampton, in his day, a black man, you know, when he threw his power fist up, that meant something. You see, that's what it meant. And everybody gave each other dap and everything. Everywhere they went, there was always a handshake going on. You know, that's what was happening. So always remember, it's a totally different meet and greet today. We must learn as black people to meet and greet. I watch white people all the time. You swear they've known each other for years. You know, but with black people, we must learn to have a care for each other, even upon, you know, sight, you know, first sight, you know, have some care. Now, what we're trying to say is, when America can take a man like Fred Hampton and make him invisible, because you just can't go, I give you the predicament, I give it to you. If you had got on the trail to try to do some research with Fred Hampton, now that wouldn't be that easy for you. You know, that wouldn't be that easy for you to do because you would run into maybe the necessaries of subpoenas. You would find yourself trying to go to the court or even using the court libraries, you know, to find the Fred Hampton case. But see, if you ask for the Fred Hampton case, people may point over as some files for you to go, you know, scroll through, you know, and being in alphabetical order, you would think it would be very simple, but it's not there. See, that's why Fred Hampton is invisible. And like I said earlier, even Google, yes, says that they would just wish the case would disappear. So truly, Fred Hampton is invisible in America. Now, that's why this presentation is being gave so that the NBA can also recognize it's very important when you make statements to make good on it. people would love to see the reemergence of those good attributes from Fred Hampton. You know, they all met up with the same economic poverty. It all got linked in there, you know, and the NBA is right on the threshold of being able to support the black hood. I'm not trying to come down on y'all, man, but I'm just simply saying, you very rich. It's just that simple, you know, but you really ain't trying to invest down there, are you? Because, I mean, you could buy a whole block, straight up. T.I. tell you that, the rapper T.I. You know, see, these are people who are fulfilling the goals of Fred Hampton under good attributes. So we're waiting to see what you come with. But yet, you would always have to look at Fred Hampton not in the same light as Jesse. Because if you went to Google and you Google Jesse James, you will find a rich family history, resources. You know, when I say rich, I'm using that in terms of resources and locating the family. You know, it's very common. You know, Google has laid it out, got 4-5 pages under it. And that's where you will even see the comments. There's some comments or some quotes. When you use that comparison of Jesse James back over to Fred Hampton, you will see it's a totally different paper trail. The paper trail ends, you know, very, very short and shallow, you know. But that's why we're here, to make sure that that doesn't happen. We cannot allow Fred Hampton and whatever legal cases that can be found. We must always remember that is your paper trail to finding who did it. Yes, it's very important sometimes. You know, everybody wants to know the facts and the name players. You know, who's the players of the game, you know, who done him in. But today, if I can just take just a moment. Just a moment. And do this the old-fashioned way. It's going to bring it to you. Now make sure that's in your screen. Use your tech. Use your tech right now. I want you to use your tech, and if you can't see anything but the caption page, anything in there that you can see and grab, I'm going to hold steady for you. Now you should be able to see that in your screen. Okay. Those are the family. That's the family of Fred Hampton. Yes. That's very important for you to realize who carried on the legal justice on his behalf. That case also touches on the Clark family. Lots of times we have to keep in mind it's not just the Hampton family. You know, the Clark family took a loss that night. Rest in peace, both them brothers. You see, so we have the case right there. Yes, we know of it now. So some things may have been said to you by the invisible man that you knew. You knew certain things. That's how the invisible man is. He will always give you things that you may know, but some may not. See, we can't always use our personal IQ and to assume that everybody has the same IQ as you have. You see, so, you know, just remember to pass things on when you're speaking of Fred Hampton. Because, you know, in speaking of Fred Hampton, it's real easy today to do that. I mean, if you spoke of Fred Hampton in the 70s, you know, he died in 69, so I'm going to say 70s. You know, there would be people, you know, possibly wanting to round you up. Yes, just that you was part of that following of Fred Hampton. They want to round you up. So it wasn't that simple. Same thing like with Jesus. People speak of Christianity today very easily. They speak of Christianity, but if you were a follower, if you were willing to testify that you was a follower of Jesus, yeah, they'd make that possible. That death wish, they'd make that possible for you. You see, that was in the days of Jesus. People trying to say they a follower of Jesus. Yeah, go ahead. It's easy today. So I'm saying the same thing when it came to Fred Hampton. You got a stand-up guy? Okay, we want to know who is he. Yeah, the fans wasn't playing. And it ain't funny either. Excuse my country boy way. You know how I mean that. You know how I mean that. It ain't funny. But I'm saying that to say, always remember, have a high respect for Fred Hampton, because he is invisible. He is clearly on the team of invisible men, clearly. Google will even say the same thing. I'm not here trying to start no mess. I'm telling you, if you don't believe Harry Guys, you don't have to. You don't have to. Believe in your tech. But you look it up any way you want, but you really won't get to the meat. So you want some meat when you're talking about Fred Hampton now. Yeah. You gotta get to the meat of that case. Because it don't go nowhere. You're walking in a library in America. He non-existent. Non-existent. Because you'd have to go, like I said, through the FBI, courts, and subpoena. And who are you anyway trying to inquire? See, you be open to them some doors that, you have to be strong enough to try to get through. It ain't that simple. So I have brought to you today, Harry Gines has successfully brought some education, some legal education. This is an educational piece. Don't try to make my piece out to be anything that it wasn't intended for. It's an educational presentation. People always want to try to say it's some racist undertone. No, I don't do that. There's no racist undertone. I'm talking to the world when I speak. This is the voice of the poor. That's who Harry Gines represents. Those are the people Fred Hampton was trying to serve. The poor. Okay? So I ain't here. Look, I can put on power suits however you want. But when it's all said and done, there's millions of people more richer than me. I'm just blessed to have a roof over my head because I serve this country. Yes, I am a veteran of the United States. Make no doubt to that. So I have a right to speak. And I bring it in a way that the world can see the injustice and feel necessary. If you speaking of Fred Hampton, stop leaving out that paper trail. Make sure you have it. And then you do your own research. I ain't got no problem with that. You digging that. I'm not going to go through every page of that case for you. You say you want to talk about Fred Hampton, make sure you get as much paper trail as you possibly can find. If you can find any. He is invisible. Now this is Harry Gines and Isiah. Man, come on, man. You coming out of Chicago. You've always represented. I'm not leaving you hanging, man. I'm counting on you, man. Get us out of this, man. Bring some programs like you was talking about. That's all we asking. Because you sound like to me, and you come out of Chicago, so it's all linked, man. It's all linked. It's all good. Ain't nothing but family here, man. Ain't nothing but family here. We come straight. You get with Tim Hardaway and them, they'll tell you about this presentation. It's not meant to leave you out there. It's to encourage you. This is to give you some fuel. I'm not trying to leave you hanging like that. We need you, man. We hoping that you would be able to make a difference. Now, this is Harry Gines, and, like I say, it's always hard, for me to leave y'all, but Y'all get with Isiah and let him know somebody waiting on him. I get with y'all, man. More power.